Welcome, everyone. My name is Kelly Scott Reed, and welcome to A Word with Kelly Scott Reed, the most redundant introduction ever. We are here today with Bonnie Meekums. Thank you so much for joining us, Bonnie. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm fine. I'm really good in the UK, where the weather is constantly changing.
We feel you. We're in Rochester, which is pretty much right across if you drew a line.
Yeah.
For where you are. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Bonnie.
Okay, so I live in Greater Manchester. I'm originally from Southeast London. So for a lot of Americans, Britain is tiny, and it is compared to your country, but that's actually not terribly near to each other. So I grew up in a different part of the country, and I spend a lot of my time talking to people in New Zealand, because I've got what the New Zealanders call whānau, which is spelled W-H-A-N-A-U. It means roughly extended family. So I've got family out in New Zealand, and hey, I'm going to get out there this year, I'm hoping.
That's awesome.
I just booked a very nervous flight, or nervously booked a flight, I should say, last night.
Hey, Bonnie, your sound is cutting out a little bit.
Oh, okay. I wonder.
So, yeah, because I don't know. Sometimes when you move your head, I'm just letting you know.
Oh, okay. I'll try not to move so much. It's really hard for me. It's really hard for me not to move.
Me too. I totally understand. We'll just like robotically move, like really slow. No, just
the
reason
the reason these are on, because in my house I have right now my husband, my oldest son, my youngest son, my youngest son's girlfriend, and two of my grandchildren. These are all to come up and nice for you. I spend a lot of time around grandchildren. I'm that age, and I walk in the hills and do yoga, and of course write.
Lovely. So what is an early memory that you have where you realized or discovered that language had power?
I've written about this in I'm just going to move to show Remnants of War, which is a memoir that I wrote with one of my sisters. So this is my sister Jackie, and that's me on our rocking horse when we were little. And what I write about in there, one of the things I write about in there, or we write about in there, is our memory of walking to the library. So when we grew up in a working class family, there weren't many books. Books cost money, and there just weren't that many books. Although my dad, bless him, spent a lot of his hard-earned cash on a series of encyclopedias for us. But we had some things like I was bought a poetry book. Oh my God. Stevenson. Still in print. And I was bought and I could be in the places that he was writing about. And that was what was so special about everything I took out of the library as well. It transported me into other worlds. This was magic. I never thought I would be creating that magic, I have to say.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and that book is really beautiful. I'm glad you said something about it. We do have a book club, so I just wrote down because we're always looking for books to read and review for folks. Now, when you say Remnants of War, was that obviously World War II that you're speaking of? I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Okay.
Okay.
We were born shortly after World War II, my sister and I. So yeah, she's 1950, I'm 1952, And there was still rationing when I was born here in the UK. So, and that thing of make do mend, which was around in World War II, as some of you won't know about, but we certainly remember. It was so it's a play on words, because remnants are bits of cloth that you buy that, you know, are like ends of sort of whatever they were selling, and you can make something out of that. So it's, we are remnants of war. Remnants were very much a feature. Am I still
Cool. I'm sorry?
Still, because I could try without the headphones.
I would do that, because I think that
Okay.
it keeps cutting. Are you guys hearing the same thing I am, or is it just me hearing it? You're hearing it?
Yes. Any better?
Okay. Yeah. Let's see if that works.
No, hang on a minute. I just have to turn you up. Sorry.
Oh, that sounds so much better. I think because you have such important. No, that's okay. You have great things to say, and I'm like, oh no, there she goes. I need to. You're saying such really beautiful, interesting things that interest me, because my grandmother was born and raised in Italy, and during the war. So that's why that book is very interesting to me. One of the reasons. It's interesting subject matter anyway, but I really would love to read that. That's awesome. I wrote it down.
Well, it's easy enough to get hold of, and we deliberately priced it quite low because we want people to read it, and it's not there to make us money. It's just we want it read. So yeah, get a copy.
That's great. Awesome. All right. And what would be, Bonnie, your writing kryptonite?
Ooh, writing kryptonite. I think it's, you know, when we're all writers here, yeah? Is everyone here a writer? Yeah. We all know this.
I guess.
We all know this one. When the rejections roll in. You know, when you get you get several. So if you submit a lot, which I do because I write a lot of flash fiction, particularly, and you know, and also whenever I've tried to submit novels to agents, I've got those rejections rolling in. And of course, I've also had things published, and I've, you know, had things traditionally published. But it's you know, we all know what that rejection feels like, and it's hard to keep going when that happens. You know, I really rely on the writing community to remind me that we all have that, and that, you know, people like J.K. Rowling, who wrote the Harry Potter books, got tons of rejections before she got that stuff accepted, and there's loads of examples like that. But I have to remind myself, and I rely on my writer friends to remind me as well. Otherwise, that would definitely, I'm giving up, throwing my toys out.
Yes. Listen, my husband had been telling me, I never submitted anything until this press. I never submitted a thing because I was afraid of that rejection. I'm like, you know what? I do this because I like it. I don't need anybody to read it. So I never submitted a thing because I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to do that. But now I realized, because Tiffany had this beautiful idea, that we can be people who are the people who give people a chance, and just say, you know, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be exceptional. We want, of course, quality, but if you have a story to tell and a good voice to tell it with, why not? Why not let other people read it? And I think that's what's been comforting to me about the press. I'm like, you know, I've never even took the chance. My husband used to yell at me all the time, why don't you submit this? Why don't you do this? I'm like, who wants to read I have to say. That's what I
Well, I'm so glad you're getting stuff out there now. It's so important not to just keep it to yourself. You know, I mean, when we create these things, we create them for a reason, I guess, and they should be shared, you know.
Exactly.
They really should be.
Awesome. And so if you weren't writing, what would you be doing to be creative? What would your creative outlet be?
Oh, okay, that's easy, because the other thing I've spent my life doing, really, since my early adulthood at least, is I'm something called a dance movement psychotherapist here in Britain, dance movement therapist in the States, and it's got a slash between dance and movement in the States. It doesn't have here. It's really weird. But anyway, so when I write about it, I just use 3 words: dance, movement, therapy, because those are internationally recognized. So I dance. I still dance at my ripe old age, and in fact, I'm engaged in a dance project at the moment. I'm not the choreographer. I'm just a dancer, but I work with a wonderful choreographer who works with. We're a community group. It's not a bunch of professionals, but yeah, she's fabulous and knows how to kind of get stuff out of people. So yeah, that's what I really, 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 really love doing, apart from writing, is dance, contemporary.
That's amazing. Now, did you do this? Has this been something you've always done, or when did you become a dancer?
So there's a story to that, like there is to everything. So when I'll try and be brief. When I was a little girl, I had polio at the age of 3, in the days when that was still a thing in countries like Britain. I mean, it's still a thing in some countries around the world. I had to learn to walk again, and then I got so fascinated by movement. I would climb massive oak trees and turn myself upside down on metal bars, and I wanted to be a ballerina, and I had an idol whom I'd never seen even on the telly, but I had an idol who was Alicia Markova, and I wanted to be her. And my sister and I, the one that I wrote Remnants of War with, would kind of go around holding on the furniture in our slippers, as if we were on points in our slippers. and we sort of learned the dance of the Sugar Plum Fairy and stuff like that, and would kind of prance around pretending to be these people. And I wanted to take ballet lessons, but we were a working class family. We didn't have much money, and my mum decided it wasn't a good idea for me to do that. So at the age of 21, when I got my first job post degree, which happened to be a science degree, by the way, that's another story, but I started taking dance classes in Cambridge. I was working for Cambridge University, and I started taking contemporary dance classes. And oh my God, I can still feel the joy in my body of finally doing what I loved doing. And then I did actually end up going off and training at an arts college in dance theatre and writing, but the writing was really poorly taught. Actually, I didn't get much out of that. The writing really came much later in life, but that was the start of my dance career. So as an adult.
Wow. That's amazing. Learning dance when you're older, or when you're able to realize the mind-body connection, because when you had to learn to walk again, your mind-body connection is made usually when you're not even cognizant of it being made. I'm a yoga instructor, so I get exactly what you're saying about the movement and what about. So when you have that mind-body connection that you're making as an adult, it is so powerful. And it's so great that, oh my gosh, this is really inspiring. I really love this. I mean, I know it's about writing, but I really do love to hear about the other aspects of people's life that they're creative in. And this one is pretty powerful. That was really great. Thank you.
I love all of the arts. I mean, I've done pottery and painting and singing, and I used to play instruments when I was younger, but very poorly. And yes, I just and I've done a lot of theatre. I love all of the arts, but those are my big 2, are the writing and the dance, definitely.
That's awesome. Well, one more question. What's the most difficult part of your process?
I think the editing, but I used to say the editing. It depends what I'm editing. Okay, so if I'm editing a full-length novel, that is hard work. At the moment, I'm in the middle of some edits, and I've got my list of edits, and it's like, oh, what happened to that bit there? We need to put that in somewhere else as well. And then I've got to go right through the novel and think, where's that going to go in? So that's a really difficult process. It's much more fun with short things like flash fiction. I actually enjoy editing with flash fiction. It's really good fun because I'm a bit of a nerd, and I went to something called a grammar school here in the UK where we learned English grammar, and we learned things like précis, getting like 500 words down to 100 or something like that. So I love that thing about like finding the most elegant and concise way of saying something, and making up verbs, for example. I love making up verbs. I'm trying to think of one, but anyway, so finding different ways to say things and using fewer words to do it is actually quite a joy. So that's not really the most difficult part of my process when it comes to flash, but it is when it comes to novels, definitely.
Mm. I'm always saying I love concise language. A little too much. Like the simpler the better, bullet points, which makes me not suited for long form, because I want it said as quickly as possible. I want the story just told. So I prefer shorter. When I start to try to write something long, I actually get bored. I bore myself. So I'm like, I don't want to talk. Who cares? But that's interesting. How interesting that they had that it's called a grammar school. We have our school in the United States for little children is called grammar school.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but it's not anything to do with grammar.
Oh, how weird.
Just look at Instagram and Twitter. You find out quickly that
is that like after kindergarten they go into grammar school?
Yes, they go into grammar school. And that's interesting. When you said you went to grammar school, I go, we did too, but we didn't do any of that stuff.
Wow, how interesting.
I actually have like a little surprise question for you. What is something, and you kind of said a lot of this, but maybe there's something else that you can expand upon. What is something in your life that makes you feel free?
Ooh, what a lovely, lovely question. Well, do you know what? If you'd asked me that when I was like 20, I'd have said driving my car. Definitely. Like that was the freedom of having my first car and the freedom of being, behind the wheel as a woman in the early 1970s was just wonderful. But now I would say definitely the feeling of being on the top of a mountain. I don't very often climb mountains. I climb quite a lot of hills, but here where I live in the foothills of something called the Pennine Hills, which are like the backbone of England. And so I can get up reasonably high, but not like mountains. The last mountain I climbed was probably Table Mountain in South Africa. Oh no, since then I've been up Ben Lomond in Queenstown, South Island, New Zealand, which I'd already done before Table Mountain, but I've been up again. But oh my God, Table Mountain is such a hard climb. But when you get to the top, it's like being on top of the world, and actually I've taken children up hills and they've said, I can see the whole world from here, Nana. And it's that feeling, of I can see the whole world. Oh, I love it.
That's awesome. Man, that makes me excited and wanted to go climb a mountain right this minute. It really, I want to go right now.
Good.
Final question. Will you be my best friend? I'm not kidding.
Yes. Yes, of course.
You are so much fun to talk to. Thank you so much, Bonnie, for your time. This has been great. This has been really fun. And go ahead and plug anything that you want to plug, your book, obviously, and anything you're working on right now.
Sure. Well, I won't plug what I'm working on right now because it doesn't have a title, and I don't want to, sort of ruin it, really. So my first novel was this, A Kind of Family. I know you've got that like back to front, haven't you?
No, I see it.
Oh, you've got it the right way around. Oh, that's so this photograph here It's taken by my husband. It actually opens right out. So, and that's from the top of Ben Lomond in Queenstown. And actually, I was inspired to write this book by the Maori concept of whānau, which cuts right across New Zealand society. And this I worked with the artist on that image, which is a koru, which is a Maori symbol of growth. It's comes from the fern that, you know, because the New Zealand fern is a symbol of theirs, and the fern as it unfurls looks a bit like that. But it's not about New Zealand at all, really, although it does feature a bit. It's about what we see as family. What does family mean to us? And I don't think it has to mean, because I have a step family. My husband and I had 2 kids apiece when we married at the age of 40, and then we had another one at 42, and they are all close to each other. They all see each other as brothers and sister. There's only the one's daughter, and my grandchildren are all my grandchildren, whether they have a genetic link to me or not. So it's really, really important to me, this whole concept of, you know, family being more than genetics. And this kind of really struggles with that whole question. And it follows a woman called Rachel, who's in her 40s when the book opens, and her only brother in Australia has just decided to cut off all contact with her a year after she's lost her parents. She's just got her friends, and then she falls in love with another woman, and they create their own kind of family, which is just, I love it.
Oh, wow.
So,
That's awesome.
I shouldn't say I love it when it's my own novel, should I? Well, I don't know.
No, you
have to love
should.
your own
Toot
work,
your own
actually.
horn. Toot
You
your
do.
own horn.
They've become my family. The characters in there are like, it's like, oh, maybe I should have dinner with Rachel sometime. You know, it feels like that. This is my second novel, My Upside Down World, and I went back to World War II for that one. So it's a historical novel, and hence the Spitfire, and that follows. Funnily enough, my books tend to follow a woman's journey in some way, and this is a woman who, the start of the book, has, I think it's 4 kids already, all boys, and she's got a 5th on the way. And the question is, do I tell my husband before he goes off to war? And she doesn't. She tells him afterwards, and he does hear about the child, but then suddenly he dies. And there's a few people dying, there's a few people die in my books quite often. You know, often it's the person that's mentored the, you know, so the protagonist, but yeah. So in this one, she's a real, I hate to say it about any woman, but she's a bit of a wimp at the beginning of the book, in that she's always hid behind her adoptive mother's skirts, and then her husband, and she's like, she lets other people make the decisions for her, and suddenly she has to make this decision: do I go north to get evacuated with my children during the London Blitz, or do I stay? And she does go north, and that's where her life changes. And she comes back to London a changed woman.
Awesome. Very cool. Oh my gosh, Bonnie. Exciting things. Thank you.
They're both available on Amazon. So,
Perfect.
and you can get them in Kindle or paperback. Yeah.
Fabulous. Well, Bonnie, we are going to be putting these out once a week. So we'll email you when it's your week,
Yay. Thank you.
so that you can put yourself out so your friends and family and all your followers can watch you. Thank you so much for being with us. This has been really, really fun for me. Thank you.
Oh, well,
awesome.
I wish we could talk forever, but I want to know more about Tiffany and Marianne as well. I love seeing them smiling at me. But
aren't they gorge? They're gorge. But yeah, we are going to be doing a book club. We're going to be doing let me just turn my, oh my gosh, I got to turn my recording off, or we